As Washington, D.C.'s central library, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library serves D.C. residents from every neighborhood and culture in our city, with offerings ranging from makers' labs to town halls, co-working to concerts. We go well beyond books. Here, artists and activists, teachers and learners, toddlers and seniors converge to explore our city's past and the infinite potential of its future. Because the MLK Library is not only a place to be quiet, it is a place to be heard, to be understood. It is a place to explore the possibility of all we can be. And it is a place to just be. Welcome to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, celebrating 50 years as Washington, D.C.'s first memorial to Dr. King.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Natalia Addison, adult librarian here at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, Washington, D.C.'s first memorial to Dr. King. Welcome to today's virtual program with Garrick Kennedy, author of Didn't We Almost Have It All? In Defense of Whitney Houston. We are delighted to kick off our celebration of Black Music Month and LGBTQ Pride Month in conversation with two lovers of the written word, Garrick Kennedy and Mocha Ochoa. Garrick Kennedy is an award journalist, cultural critic, and author based in Los Angeles. Kennedy is the author of Parental Discretion is Advised, The Rise of NWA, and Dawn of Gangsta Rap. His writing has appeared in GQ, Wall Street Journal Magazine, NPR, Spin, Playboy, Teen Vogue, Shondaland, Cultured Magazine, and Men's Health, and the Los Angeles Times. Welcome, Garrick. A publishing executive and promoter, Mocha Ochoa is no stranger to Washington, D.C. or the MLK Library, bringing a wonderful mix of authors to the Central Library for in-person and virtual conversations. Her series, The Literary Lounge, brings literary talent in for provocative discussions with artists, entertainers, and poets, all with a story to share. We thank Mocha and the Mocha Media family for joining us tonight. For our audiences watching on YouTube, submit your questions in the comments section and we'll share them during the program. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Take it away, Garrick and Mocha.
Hello, good evening, Washington, D.C., and hello, Garrick. I mean, it's so wonderful to welcome you to the MLK Library family.
Having me. It's such a pleasure to be here in conversation with you.
Wonderful. Well, it is Black Music Month. We're kicking it off June 1st with your amazing book. There's so much to go through here. I mean, but let me first ask you, this is your second book, correct?
It is. It is.
Okay. And your first book was?
First book was Parental Discretion is Advised. I wanted to write a book on individual. Well, let me not lie to you. I originally started that project. It was going to be on Ice Cube, and I think what he's accomplished both in rap and in Hollywood, to me, is one of my favorite success stories. And I always thought, he doesn't get enough credit for what he had done, and so I wanted to write something to that. But then, there was a film that was coming out on the group, and then I realized there was nothing written about in a book form, and that felt. I don't know. It felt unfair, sort of, to their legacy, but also to this story that I think so many of us we knew bits and pieces of. And I'm someone, I enjoyed the film. I thought the film was, a great moment for their legacy. But obviously, a 2.5 hour film is going to just give you a particular version, and I wanted to go beyond that, and so that was really sort of the motivation for that. And so I had so many people, when they heard about this book, and it's like, well, how did you jump from that to this? And I have written about hip hop and R&B the entirety of my career. I think both of these genres of music. they deserve scholarship, and they deserve scholarship from Black writers, and that doesn't always happen. And so it really has been my mission to kind of change that. And so when we get to, Didn't We Almost Have It All? That was a book that was born out of, one of the things to me that feels like the biggest injustice, which was nobody was studying not only Whitney's music, but her career and what she meant. We all say these amazing platitudes with her about, the Star Spangled Banner or I Will Always Love You. We talk about her as the voice, but we don't talk about what that meant. We don't talk about the price that she paid to be who she was. We don't talk about how we reacted to that and how we still struggle with that. And so I felt like it was a good time. It's been 10 years since we lost her. It felt like a good time to have a moment of reflection of how far we've come as people, but also how much work we still have to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you've done an amazing job. For anyone who is a Whitney fan, who is a music lover of this time period, the 80s, the 90s. You break down, there's so much research done in here. You've done an amazing job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It makes you look at not only Whitney, but it places you at that time period in your life of when these certain things, these pieces came out, or when, she was on this show or this particular record came out. And you were really able to get and create background to, I never thought about it like that. Mm-hmm. And even I never thought about my life like that I looked at it like that. And as you say, towards the end of the book, the book is really about, would we have treated Whitney the same way then through that lens that we treated her, or that we would have treated her today? Would that have been acceptable?
Yeah.
Yeah. And where did Whitney, why Whitney? Okay, I'm going to write about Whitney. Where did Whitney come from? Or did she come to you? Some writers say the story just comes to them.
Yeah. This is a situation where, a lot of people who followed me, I had gotten this question so much, when are you going to write about Whitney? And a lot of that was attached to the fact that I, unfortunately, was one of the last people to see her alive that weekend, that Grammy weekend. And, I wrote about it. I did so many media hits, and this was all at the point of my career. I was really young, and I was really ill-equipped to deal with being on the scene. And then now it's like, oh, you're a source. I'm used to being the ones asking the questions. I'm used to being the one writing the story. And so that was really difficult for me. And so to me, it was always, there was this person I had spent my life loving their music and loving them, but then I had just met them. And then 2 days later, they were gone. That was a really heavy burden that I never fully dealt with, because after losing Whitney, the story then became that family. It became writing about, the tragic arc that, extended to Bobby Chris, obviously all the way to, Nick Gordon and their friends. And so I spent so many years writing about what the estate was doing and following, just this really tragic arc that I was so divorced from how I felt with her music and how it made me feel growing up, loving her, discovering her. I wanted to get back to that, but I knew at some point I needed to kind of confront my own grief around it and around what that weekend looked like, what it felt like. The constant reminder, anytime that there was a Grammys the next year, I covered the Grammys for a decade. So every year someone brings it up in a particular kind of way. And so I was always thinking about that a lot. And so I knew I wanted to write about Whitney because I wanted to celebrate Whitney, and I wanted to celebrate my love of Whitney, but I also wanted to celebrate my love of R&B and my absolute passion for Black women who do R&B music, because that's what I was raised on. Actually, no one can actually even see this. I'll stand up a little bit. I got a bunch of my ladies on it.
Okay.
So that's always been the center of my work, because again, I think so much, and this is nothing against anyone else, but one thing that I noticed, you go to the bookstore, and there's a million books on Prince. I love Prince. I'm a big Prince fan. We study Prince music. We take him serious as a musician. There's so much scholarship around it. But there is none for Whitney. There is none for Janet Jackson. There is none for Mariah Carey. There is none for Aaliyah. There's none for so many of these women who have created these sounds and who have created these movements. And so, I wanted to use just also my background as a reporter, but also my background as a critic, and foremost, my background as somebody who loves all this music and has spent an entire life listening to this music, talking about this music. I wanted to write a book about the ways that I think about Whitney. And it is very specific ways. And so one of the things that I knew I was up against was so many people, hearing about a book on Whitney Houston. And so many of us automatically think to, oh my God, here's another person that's trying to excavate all this stuff about her, because our experiences with Whitney is so rooted in the trauma of her life that we don't make much space to celebrate her. We don't make much space to talk about her and not talk about everything else. Every conversation, this book has been out for a couple of months. It has been an incredible journey to have this out in the world. But I have noticed every media hit, one of the questions is, well, if Bobby didn't ruin her life, then what would have happened? And it's like, oh, no, let's back up. Right. Because the way in which so many of us, we have allowed ourselves to believe that this was a woman who had zero power in her life, who had zero agency over who she was. She made decisions, not always good decisions, not always healthy decisions, but they were decisions that she made. Yeah. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time sitting in that, because I think if we're only going to do that, that renders her really flat in a particular way. I want to talk about us, and I want to have a conversation with us as a community. And this is two conversations I want to have. I'm gonna have a conversation with Black people first and foremost, but I also want to have a conversation with the world, because Whitney was she belonged to the world, but she belonged to us. And part of what we did with her was we put our expectations, we put our shame, we put our disappointment, we put all of that on her, and we let her know that. And so I think when you are looking at someone who had a career that was so defined by those moments, how much time did we spend talking about her getting booed at the Soul Train Awards? How much time did we spend talking about, well, she can't hit this note the same way she hit it in 92. Okay. But these are not things that we do to other artists. And part of that is, she had a gift that was unparalleled, and then we watched that gift perish. And, again, we're going to be hard on each other because that's how we are as Black people. And so I wanted to make a lot of space for that. But I also wanted to say, oh, wait, I'm going to hold your hand through some of these conversations, but we are going to talk, because we're going to talk about the fact that we were not looking at Whitney through the lens of what was happening in the 90s, what was happening with Black women in pop music, Black women in the music industry, but also Black women in America. So much of Whitney's story is the story of what it is to be a Black woman in this world, where you are going to go to an office and somebody's going to tell you, well, oh my God, you were so great and you save all the things, but why don't you take this back seat to this man? There's all these ways that her story connects to the experience of, yes, Black women, but also Black people. And I wanted to write about that. I wanted to write about our proximity to Blackness and how we believe that she didn't perform it to our liking. And that is a very particular thing to say. And I knew I was going to say a lot of spicy things in this book, but I felt like it was time for us to really sit in that reflection, because we spend so much time talking about, Bobby, but we don't even have a real conversation around that. We see it as, oh, this person did this in order to appease us, and not that there couldn't have possibly been any love there or any authentic connection between these two people, because we were so worried about being like, well, we do think this other rumor is the truth. And so what's going on? Right. There was a lot to kind of work through, which is why, I tell people in the introduction, if you were looking for a cradle to grave book, or you were looking for a book that's going to be all the gossip on, where things went wrong, you should just put that thing down and go elsewhere. Right. Someone else is going to have that book. People have written that book in the 80s and 90s, and again, I understand that she's a huge celebrity, so those books are going to exist, but that's not this one. This is scholarship. This is a book of cultural criticism, and these are the things that I believe that our artists deserve.
Exactly.
And it needed to come from Black writers. I just need to
Yes. I mean, you did a really amazing job of well, how long did it take for you to do the research for all of this? Because, I mean, you've researched her family from when they came from the South and really given us perspective and another lens to look even through that lens. And I was thinking today with the anniversary of the Tulsa massacre and what it meant for migration and what the hopes and dreams of Black people were at that point in time when her grandparents, when Sissy's parents, her mother's parents, came and moved to Newark. So even that, and you kind of set the setting there of who her grandfather was, what his expectations of the family were, who Sissy was, and then enters Whitney. So you kind of get the whole backdrop of, well, this is where this sister is coming from.
Yeah.
So it's almost like her life was molded for her.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, so this is a 4-year journey, this book. And that is, you know, researching, that is writing, that is changing the scope of it. You know, so at one point in the research, I felt like as I was doing my research, there was a couple of pivotal moments that happened. The family made a documentary, an incredible documentary, but that documentary ended up being this really huge piece of the puzzle where we learned some things about her that were, you know, really dark and uncomfortable. One of which is, you know, that she had experienced, you know, sexual abuse as a child.
Right.
And I think, you know, between Robin Crawford, she had written a book, a really fantastic book where she, you know, ended her silence after 40 years, which, you know, I think if there's ever an act of love, it is holding on to something for 40 years and not saying a word. My goodness, I still get chills every time I think about it. And I think these moments combined with this family that we have seen share their grief with us in a really public way, but also in a way that was a bit of a reckoning for them.
Yes.
I think all of these things taken together, I realized, you know, maybe it's time to have a different conversation around Whitney.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's time to have a conversation that, to me, I've been having with people, and every now and then they're just like, oh, well, I never thought, or, you know, and it was usually just music stuff. But I think it was once I started talking about, you know, what else was there for Whitney to do other than be who she was for us. When you take the family lineage into play, when you take into, you know, what she was surrounded by, you were surrounded by all of these extraordinary vocalists. How does that not pass on to you in some way? You know, even if you wanted to live a life of anonymity, like that just was not going to really be an option.
No.
The same way it wasn't going to really be an option.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Trained you.
Yeah, the same way that, you know, we look at Janet Jackson, and, you know, it's the same story where it's like she's born into this in a particular way, but I also think too she saw her calling, she saw this gift, and she wanted to share that with the world. Obviously, she didn't really want all of this fame or the other stuff that comes with the fame, the criticism, all those sorts of things. But I think I wanted to write to all of that because I think those things were so important, and they get lost. I mean, sitting with who Cissy Houston is as a formidable act, musician, I think we need that because it got lost in all of when we write about Whitney, it became an afterthought of, oh, you know, she sang with Aretha Franklin. Even if you just isolate that as its own thing, like she sang with
That's
Aretha
one
Franklin.
thing. I mean, she was at the Newport News. I had no idea she sang with Mahalia Jackson at the Newport News Jazz Festival for a gospel act. She was there singing backup. She did arrangements for all of these authors, musicians,
you know, singing with Elvis. You know, all these moments that I think, you know, really show not just the power of who her mother was as an artist, but also what Whitney learned from,
Exactly.
that school of thought, and just that level of sheer excellence, I think, really set the scene for so many things. And I felt like, a lot of people, it was easy for them because they had limited knowledge around Sissy. It was very easy to just say, "Oh, well, this is a stage mom that's trying to, live in the shadows of her daughter."
Well,
And I
she's a
felt like
legend
that
herself,
really,
right?
yeah, she's a legend, of course. And so I wanted to just have different conversations around so many of these things. I want to have a different conversation around, Whitney and race, and Whitney and sexuality, and Whitney and faith, and
Right.
also the darker stuff. I wanted to talk about,
The shadows that
yeah,
Mary J. Blige says, the shadows
shadows,
that
right?
we
The
don't
shadows.
explore enough, right? And it's true. When I was thinking of when I was reading the book too, I was thinking, wow, I wonder, Dr. Maddie Moss Clark and the Clark sisters. I wonder how much they could relate to this too. Like
Mhm.
that was, she threw a shoe if they hit the wrong note and all of that. She demanded excellence. So then, what does excellence mean, and how much room is there for shadows when you're always on? And you go from your mom to Clive Davis, and
Yeah.
everybody's planning everything out for you.
Mhm.
When is there room for you to even explore who you are, and for it to just feel comfortable and acceptable to you, and not have to worry about, is everyone else going to find it acceptable too?
Right.
I mean, that's a whole lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure.
Right, right. Okay, so let's go right into it. So she is, singing, and I didn't know that there's so many. Oh, first of all, there's so many things I was like, what? Like, huh? And we'll get to those. One in particular that I'm just like, okay, you are not dead to me, sir. But we'll get there. We'll get there. But so when she was in the studio with her mom that time, and she came from school, and there was a backup singer that didn't show up. And I was like, no problem, we got it. You see that little girl right there coming from the I was like, yeah, no, please, we got this thing. So tell us about that story, about how when Whitney first was able to showcase, but outside of the church, those
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah, Sissy really struggled with doing secular music, as a lot of people, reared in, gospel singing sometimes struggle with. But it also became a way to provide for her family. And Whitney's father, Sissy's, husband, John, was very much just like, well, Dion is over here getting his money, so you could also do this as well. And she did. And so she was able to quit her job. She was working at the RCA plant, and she was able to quit her job to then just do session work full time. And she was working with Michael Zagler, this musician that has been lost to the ether of just time. And Whitney was there, and the singer didn't show up, and Sissy was like, she can do it. And he didn't take it serious. He's like, who, this kid, I'm sure they can't sing in this way that we need it. And Sissy's like, no, she can do it.
Mhm.
And Whitney marched right in there and she sang it. So the first time you actually hear Whitney's voice on record is this dance record called "Life's a Party." You can find it on YouTube. And if you listen closely, you will hear young Whitney. You will hear Whitney at 15. You will hear Sissy also. And I just think a moment like that, it unlocked so many things, but it was such a reminder going back now with all of the career that she's had, all of these things, when you're then able to go back and it's like, gosh, she was singing, she was doing this, she was singing with Shaka Khan, she was singing with all these people when she was a teenager, and it was for fun. Yeah, I want to eventually do this, but Sissy was like, you're gonna finish high school. You know what I mean? She definitely, as a mom, was like, these are things that we are not going to cut through that. But I
Mhm.
think having those moments and being able to celebrate someone who the greatness was always sort of kind of in there, but it was really her mom saying, the same way you have lots of moms of lots of parents of athletes that's like, I know you want to go to the draft now, but
Right.
let's wait till you get a little older. That skin can get a little thicker. You know what I mean? Like, so there's certain things I want to prepare you for, which Cissy was really adamant with that. She was very much like, this is not going to happen until you are done with high school. And that was the reality, right? But I think, you know, having those moments like that, it was nice to be able to write about that, because these are these moments that have gotten lost to the story, because we just think about, oh, Whitney, yeah, she modeled and then she was on TV, you know, and it's like, no, there was a person who was slowly finding their way. Things still happened really fast, but she was still finding her way.
Right. And I like the way you took, because we assume that, you know, Clive Davis came to a club one night, heard her, and then that was it. Like, this one exec came and heard her.
Yeah.
So there was buzz about her in Manhattan, but, you know, Clive came and then that was it. But
he
I like
was into her when he came and saw her that time at the club. You know what I mean? He has revised that story and was like, oh, it was out of the gate, I knew it, and that wasn't what happened. He first thought, yeah, it's an okay singer, it's a good singer, probably not a good fit.
Right. And I think of when you know, I didn't know that, you know, of course, everybody makes mistakes and has their journeys and all of that. But I had no idea that Cissy had also gone through her own very public shame in their church. Do you think that any of that had an impact on maybe being a little overprotective of Whitney, and, oh my gosh, if this comes out or if that comes out? Do you think she was thinking of preparing her for what she may have thought shame was, according to the church, and, you know, the standards in which they had in the home? And we're talking about the moving into the relationship with Robin, you know, as she gets a little into those teenage years. It started very organically as friends, but as she began to see that, do you think maybe that's where some of that overprotectiveness came in of, I know what I went through and I don't want you to go through, and just kind of projecting? Yeah.
I think in a sense, yes. You know, I think about those first years when we saw them all, right? And we had this image, and we know, I mean, we learned later, but, you know, at least in those short amount of time, we saw them as a couple that presented, and these were their kids. And
that was the case. They were separated, right? John and
separated. Yeah. And it, you know, it's similar to what we watched with Beyonce and Matthew and Tina. It is. And I think a lot of that is also rooted in the fact that, like, people see Black folks, and as soon as they know that it's not a two-parent household, there's an idea about us. There's an opinion that's formed. And I think that pressure of keeping that sort of nuclear family preserved in the 80s especially, but also even in the 90s. I mean, you know, that was to me such an indictment of how we were seen. And so, yeah, you don't want that to become part of the conversation. And so it was years before we learned that they were separated and living separate lives. Right. You know, it doesn't change the fact that they were—
I didn't even know until this book, to tell you.
Yeah, that they were great co-parents. Yeah, it doesn't change any of that. But I think sort of the image that was presented, it was this particular image. And that image is rooted in how we also, as Black folks, especially then, had to move, had to be seen, which is why, you know, the second that there was that chatter with Robin, it took over, because it was a deviation from this particular image. Oh, you from the church, and you possibly might have a same-sex relationship? No. You know, it was seen as unacceptable. And it still is. I mean, the fact that it has actually been, we have spent 30-something years having the conversation, I think tells us a lot, right? It tells us a lot. And it was really sad, I think, to also, you know, see that part of Whitney kind of be thrown at her.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about, you know, her relationship with her parents and sort of how that was seen, and, you know, that they did the things that lots of folks do, where, you know, dad is managing. It got complicated as these things happen.
And it's interesting how something that we tried to hide so much really defined everything.
Yeah.
It ended up defining everything. It ended up defining this need to be perfect and this need to hide certain things. And then, in the media, whenever we ask you about your personal life, you seem to be, it shaped everything a secret because there's no real safe space to even express, I'm having a relationship with someone, or there's someone that I'm quite fond, or we're very close, or I don't even think, as Robin said, they really defined it. They
Right.
were just extremely close and had an extreme bond.
Mhm.
And you kind of just, well, after church one day, they 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 laid together.
Yeah.
But I like the way you did that, because, and I don't know if that was intentional, because these things are not there. It was her life. It was her. It
Yeah.
didn't mean she loved God any less. She was
Yeah.
at church. She brought Robin to church all the time. This
Yes.
was her life, and this was someone that was her best friend, and they experienced life together. So maybe a bit of being naive, and again, no safe place to really talk it through. And
Right.
it ended up
And
defining everything.
yeah, define everything, and also having I, the way I wrote it, the way that I wrote it. I'm glad that you picked up on that, is because I never saw them treated as whole people. And I think a lot of my sadness over that is what I've also experienced. As you know, a lot of people do not see queer relationships, exchanges of energy, any of it as whole. It's this sort of, you know, it's treated separately to the point where it's like sometimes you have to tell friends like we have relationships too. We believe them or not. We all these things that you all experience. We want to be married. We want to have kids. All the it's all
Cicely said the same thing.
we're all human people. You
Yeah.
know, I think when you see two teenagers, because they were teenagers when this happened, and that gets forgotten about over and over and over, and that does bother me. There were teenagers who had an experience.
Yeah.
And I think within that, the friendship that was formed there before this and then after, yeah, it was dictated by shame. It was dictated by Whitney believing this is wrong what we're doing, but also you're being told it's wrong.
Yeah.
You're not only are you being told that it's wrong in the church, but you're watching the AIDS crisis happen, and you're seeing people say if you have gay sex, you're gonna die and go to hell.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that was the language, and that was how we spoke in the 80s. That was what, the Reagans, we're gonna turn our back on queer people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like all this level of like state sanctioned homophobia that was rampant. I could not see a world. I'm asked this all the time, like, oh, if it's now, would it have been different? It's like, well, yeah, it'll be different because now things are slightly different. And
Yeah.
let's be real, there's more tolerance that happens. But this level of people feel free, no. Queer people, we are not free in this country. We are told every single day, we have some sort of reminder that our rights should be revoked and that they can be revoked when somebody's upset. You have people who are hiding in Florida right now because you're told you can't say gay. All these other things that like these people do because they want to suppress people for just living and breathing.
Yeah.
And I thought this is an opportunity because so much of their short time together has been wrapped in so much shame. And yes, that is Whitney's own shame that does come up in interviews in the way that she spoke about Robin, which is unacceptable, which I write. But I also write about the need and the desire to protect that and to preserve that, which I get where Whitney's coming from, where it was literally not our business. And it definitely was no longer our business once she had a whole marriage and a whole thing. And this person, we are friends and we work together, but we kept asking. I mean, I found an interview that Whitney did in like 2001, and you think of how long her and Bobby have been married by then, where you still are asking about Robin and like, why
Right.
is she around? And whatever happened there? And like, weren't y'all just together? And just like, why won't you tell us? And this sort of venom that she encountered because she did not want to talk about her personal life in a particular way.
Absolutely. And I love the word. I thought the same word today when you just said freedom. The freedom, she did not have the freedom. It's kind of
Mhm.
like a two-edged sword, right? It's like, why won't you tell us? Because we can see. That's one thing about human connection, right? Is
Mhm.
that you can see a bond.
You can see.
There's certain things that you can't deny. It's like you can tell when two people are trying to hide it.
Right.
Yeah, y'all, you can't, you're trying to hide it, but we can see. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, we can see it. There's something about human connection, and when we bonded with someone that you just can't fake. And I found it again interesting the way you brought us along the journey with her, and from this young innocent girl who'd been molded, shaped, everything planned out, all of that, but she did not plan for who are you sleeping with? I
Mhm.
want to sleep with you.
Mhm.
Oh, you little sexy thing. Oh,
Mhm.
no one prepared her for that. So, deer in headlights, her responses were just her organic responses that I don't think anybody really prepared her for. I don't think anyone thought that they were going to go after the princess that way. The princess they groomed.
Right.
Yeah, they were, and they
Yeah.
did. But what can you expect if you did not prepare this girl? And not
Mhm.
that she really have to answer personal questions anyways, but she was not prepared. So what she got was what she got.
Yeah.
You could kind of see through what
Mhm.
she was saying, but the shame was that she just did not have the freedom to explore.
Mhm.
And you talk about what we did to her. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. If I
Yes.
tell you the truth, what are you going to think?
Right.
I continue to tell you that it's not that, but you won't leave me alone.
Yeah.
I enter in, and at this point where y'all are booing me, you're questioning my blackness, right? So we get to blackness too. The song says, as I'm being groomed, you're finding fault in everything. I'm not black enough.
Right.
I'm not, my songs aren't R&B enough. She said, I was like, I get so emotional that little thing she was doing.
Yeah.
Like she was dancing, black enough. It wasn't black enough. And then we go from I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. There was no freedom. There
Yeah.
was no freedom. So you talk about, okay, so let's get over to Bobby. Let's get over to
Mhm.
Bobby.
Mhm.
So we're talking about, like I said, a time period where her music isn't quite black enough. Like we know she's a powerhouse. We know she's coming from the church. However, do you think that what played into that too with the not black enough was some semblance of there's something not authentic about you that you're not telling us and we can see it? Was
Oh,
it
1,000%. One of the things that was probably the biggest challenge was like, my research. I
Mhm.
would get irrationally angry at articles I would read, at radio interviews, all these things that, at this point are now like 30 plus years old. And I think what made me sad is, when you do a survey of the media landscape, there were white men, because of course white men get to be critics at all these places and we don't. There
Mhm.
were white men telling their audience and the world that this person wasn't singing black enough and
Like,
making enough music. And
right?
that to me is beyond absurd. One of my favorite chapters in the book is Bolder, Blacker, Badder. And that name, I get that, I explain it elsewhere, but that name comes from, this piece that a white critic wrote. He has since passed on. So I try not to be so spicy when I talk about him. But, and he made this comment about the second album. It's and he's using these words, and I think to me what I found so offensive by it is, one, I don't think you will get to say what is or is not black. I don't think that is for you as a white critic. But I also think it's interesting that our blackness is always associated with being bad, being bold, being loud. There's all these ways that, we are discussed through this lens. And that I thought was really interesting, where I was like, I mean, damn, all Whitney really did was throw on a leather jacket and sit on a motorcycle. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the music knocked a little bit harder, but there was a way in which, like, this narrative sort of crystallized around her, to the point that she's now being asked on national television. Barbara Walters, you're asking her on national television, what did you just get with Bobby to silence this conversation? Did you walk into a relationship with a person that you are now building a life with for your image?
Right.
That alone is insane. I know, of course, it happens in the industry. I've seen lots of relationships that were convenient, right?
Yeah.
But now you questioned her own passion, and I always watch, especially when I get a lot of white writers asking this, or white reporters, and it's just like, why Bobby? Why Bobby? And I'm just like, do you not know who Bobby Brown was in 1989?
Right.
The hottest thing. They both were. They were both the hottest people on the planet. It was that big of a surprise that they got together. And then I'm also like, go back and watch that performance that he did at the Soul Train Awards, and I would have made a shot at Bobby that day.
Right.
It was just a way of, like, and then we watched them, right? We watched them where it was like, okay, we do get it. You know what I mean? Like, they in their relationship. But to me, that level of passion, that level of, I just don't care, and like sometimes it was embarrassing, sometimes it was uncomfortable. You see that with so many couples. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, you don't care about all the stuff around you. And I like that about them. I did like that. And of course, at a certain point, it was no longer fun to watch. And that was later on. But I think the way that, that relationship was then articulated is one thing to sort of like place bets on how long it's going to last and all the stuff that was being done. But I couldn't believe that there was reporters, critics, all of it. I couldn't believe that there were people, well, why didn't you just go out with Robert De Niro when he was asking? Because he publicly courted her. People forget this story. He publicly courted her. He was old enough to be her grandfather at the time he did this. And he also had a whole spouse. No one cared. Why won't you call? Or they wanted Eddie Murphy because that was respectable. Right. You know what I mean? That was a respectable.
Forgetting Eddie Murphy Raw that they all vilified. Raw, remember that?
Yes. Yeah. And of course she had some other, she had some other experiences, with some other men in the industry or whatever. But I think there was a way that, Bobby was really dismissed. And I always challenge it because I'm like, if he didn't have an approximation to hip hop, if he hadn't had other kids out of wedlock, including one that was very close to when they got together, well, actually they already were together. So it was messy. Yeah. If those things hadn't happened and he had a couple of court cases, you wouldn't have then labeled him this thug. You wouldn't have labeled him this bad boy. And then it wouldn't have been, oh, this is a person that doesn't fit well for him, despite the fact that, like, ultimately they were both from the hood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were both from the hood. One person performed differently, how they were seen by the world, and another person didn't care. Like that was just what it was. And of course there's an attraction to that.
Yep.
So it was parts of their relationship. I'm always asked, like, well, what, it didn't make sense. And I'm like, no. It made sense to you, but it made sense to my household. It made sense to, a household where we played Don't Be Cruel all the time. We played New Edition all the time. Like, Bobby's Bobby Brown. You know what I mean? Like,
my prerogative, I can do what I want to do.
Hello?
not say like it all right there. Like,
the man made tenderoni. Like, yes, of course. I'm sorry.
Right. So in a place where Whitney had to keep asking permission or whatever, then here comes this bad boy, and come on now. I mean, with Every Little Step, I remember my friends and I in high school were like, I want to be one of those Every Little Step girls. Like, that's my ambition. I want to be practice and everything. Like, yeah. I grew up in Canada. I'm like, I'm moving to America to be a video Every Little Step girl. But
you would give away your healthcare to come be in the background.
Sorry?
Said you give up your health care to come be in the background with
Listen,
Bobby.
let me tell you, those like little boots and stuff, and I can't sleep at night. Oh yeah, no, there was everything. You know, like you know, like we love Bobby. And the fact that he could just, it seemed that he could just do what he wanted to do. He had the freedom to do it. And she didn't, you wonder why they didn't attract?
Mhm.
Of course they attracted.
Mhm.
She wanted a bite of that freedom. But, you know, again, it's when you're looking at, of course, to white America, they don't see who we saw or we know who Bobby Brown was. And then them kind of putting the test, well, is he worthy of Whitney? But
Yeah.
you know, you're dogging her anyway. So if you're her and you're in that position, yeah, let me go to where I think I can get a little bit of freedom over here and I
Mhm.
can do what I want to do, right? With this guy. So yeah, it was their relationship as it was at first was okay, yeah, we can see that. We can see that because we also knew as Black folks, we knew that she was groomed. We knew that. We knew, but we still knew that there was this girl from Newark
Mhm.
and this young man from Boston. Of course, they're Black. They hit it off. We got it. But, you know, do you ever think that Bobby looks back and thinks, man, I sacrificed a lot and took a lot of hits. I took a lot, let me just put this, I took a lot of hits in this thing, and I don't think that people really realize the toll it took on me.
Yeah, I think a lot of I know he's got a documentary out, a two parts project that I would love to watch. I'm going to actually. But you know, when I read his book, and obviously he had had his film, you know, after the New Edition film. And I really struggled with that particular piece because, you know, on one end, I always saw Bobby as like he was trying to be a certain kind of man. And that certain kind of man was, I am going to protect this woman and I am going to protect this secret because let's just be clear, it was a secret until it could not be a secret.
Right.
And it was so easy for us when we started to learn things to be like, oh yeah, it was Bobby. Because Bobby had the court cases, because Bobby had, you know, the baby mamas, because Bobby had, you know, the issues with the group, because he had all this other trouble unrelated to the law. But it was because he had the trouble with the law that we were like, no, every drug is Bobby. It was him. He did it. He was getting caught up in this stuff. He's dragging her down. He's bringing her down. And that narrative, it went so far and so wide that I have moments in retrospect that's just like, okay, yeah, there's not a real world in which Bobby in that marriage could have been like, well, no, I didn't really start doing nothing until I learned it from her. Like, you can't, there's no space for that, because we also at the same time, we completely took all his accomplishments off the table. And then not just we, I mean, that was really mainstream America, but we didn't really help because like, the hits went away. So it turned into, you know, Mr. Whitney Houston. It turned into you need her, you getting off, you pulling something off of her, you were clout chasing, all these things that we did. And so I could never really imagine a world in which like in as it was happening, we could have found a way out, but also we're finding our way out of an addiction as well. But I try to rephrase it in this particular capacity, you know, Whitney's been gone for 10 years and we still have Bobby with us. At a certain point, Bobby must have made some other types of choices. He has lost 2 of his children to addiction. You know, he lost his wife. He has also almost lost his own life, and he's, you know, Bobby had a stroke, you know, from drug use. And so these things that he has gone through, yeah, there's a part of me that thinks now he is realizing the rebuilding of an image, but it's also an image that can't be rebuilt. Like it doesn't matter what is out there. It doesn't matter what he does, what he says. And that's why I think we get some of these interviews every now and then where it's like, why are you telling us this now? Or why are you because I think so much of it is him maybe also kind of processing that trauma.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love the way you talk about in the book that where Star Spangled Banner is kind of where we began to take Whitney back. Because she represented at a time for us that we really needed. Well, first of all, I mean, you can't, every time you hear Whitney Star Spangled Banner, it's like you're hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And you really appreciate what phenomenal talent she was. And what she was able to do with just that. I don't even remember who was playing that Super Bowl game. I just remember, I mean, it just kept building and building. And the only other time she did that was I stopped the car and pulled over with "I Will Always Love You." I'm like, what in the world is that? Wait,
yeah.
What? No, I've got to just stop and listen. But those are moments for us that, yeah, that's our Whitney. And we took her back. Do you think that was a little late?
I don't think it was late. I think where it became late for us is, we, in another chapter in here, I write about, that transition into auntie,
yes,
where we really took her in. That was when we believed that there was no more music that was possible because of the struggles that we then knew were a little bit more public. We knew she was going through things. So, we see her on these reality shows, saying these catchphrases, what became catchphrases, but were also really kind of born out of trauma. The fact that so many people also still, we will use the gif of "show me the receipts" or "crack is whack," all these different things. But
crack is whack up the street in Harlem.
Yeah.
I was totally like, what?
We forget that these are moments that were rooted in her struggles and her trying to navigate her way back to us with all of the circumstances she was going through that she wasn't entirely honest with us about, which we know. But I think that us taking her back, to me, truly started with Waiting to Exhale on.
Yeah. And I was so appalled with I had no idea. First of all, I had no idea that she OD'd on that set. I had no idea. So you look at the struggle that someone is going through in front of our faces, but they can't talk about it, right? And then you look at how we betray each other. I did not know about the Kanye album cover. Like, where was I? How did I not know that? But you talk about if karma were
yeah.
Right. What do you think that we need to do as a community? Because I don't think we can fully, you've brought all the questions to the table and you've brought it all up for us to now discuss, right?
Yeah.
What do you think that we can do now as a community to not only reconcile this gift that we got that we didn't treat the best, and moving forward, what lessons that we can learn about when you freedom, when you have a gift, treating someone with a gift with enough respect to let them be free and just free to actualize their gift and give us what they came to give us.
Yeah, I think we're doing the work as people. We're trying, I think, we learned a great deal when we lost Prince, and then we had to confront the fact that we lost Prince to addiction. And that was a challenge for us because we see people with addiction and we look at them a particular way and we want them to look at us, that we want to see them in a particular kind of way. And so I think, Whitney didn't benefit from that because we saw Whitney and we saw an addict and we treated her as such. And I think, it was the same for Michael. So I think when we've lost these people and now we are starting to reconsider their legacy, but also how we showed up for them, I think this moment that we are in with Janet is indicative of how we are trying to shift as people, the way that we are reconsidering her legacy, reconsidering, how we treated her after Super Bowl, all these moments. I think these conversations we're having, even just like this and like the way that people have been engaging this work, I'm really grateful for. But I do think that's part of it is us engaging each other on it and us having these hard conversations, us doing the work. You know, we've been trying to do this work with Kanye for some years now. And I know some people, they are tired, but also some people are like, no, like, let's try to figure our way through.
Engage him, yeah.
It's a good example of it. And I think it all speaks to that. I think it really is in the way that we have sort of shifted. We've shifted our communities. We've shifted the way that we treat queer people in our communities somewhat. We're still not there yet, but we are trying as a whole, you know, and that goes beyond that. It goes to folks with different religion. It goes to so many different things that we're learning more, and we have different language to use. And so I think putting all that into practice is the first thing that we can do.
Right. And acceptance of everything and what Blackness is. Do you think that we are also moving that needle as well as to how we define Blackness? And
no, I'm always just like, oh, okay, so here's another day on Twitter where you're saying that somebody's not Black enough because they didn't grow up poor. Okay, you know, like there's these very rigid ways that I think a lot of people still look at Blackness because it needs to be their own experience within it. And that's not true or even fair. But yeah, oh my goodness, the Blackness conversation, sheesh. I mean, we see it every day. We see it with Lizzo, we see it with Beyonce, we've seen it with Rihanna, we've seen it with every single celebrity and not just even celebrities, people who make it to a certain point and now we have an opinion on them. You know, it is rooted in the fact that we are really challenged with how we see Blackness. And you ask, you know, 4 different people to give a definition, they're going to all give a different definition, which is fine. But I think the way that we negate others based off of their own experience that are not in line with ours, I think that's where we start to get into some of the dangerous territory that we've been stuck in for a very long time.
Gotcha. Favorite Whitney Houston song?
Oh my goodness. Well, right now I'm in the mood for If I Told You That.
If I told you that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And why didn't we almost have it all? Why that title?
I think because every single day that we don't have her, it's a reminder for us, which is why that title was there. Because she had it all. She had every single thing. And yes, we can have debates about where she might have went wrong, but we went wrong first.
We went wrong first. So what do we do now, Jaren? And how do we Garrick. There's water in here, I promise you.
Yeah.
No. What do we do now? What do you hope this work will do? What do you want us to do now?
I think what we are doing, having these conversations, continuing to having these conversations, but also being able to think and talk about her and have that sit in celebration and not, well, if we only knew what corner she was at when she first started messing with this or that, or like if we just knew every detail of what her and Robin did, then I could move on. Like, no, you already have all that, and it doesn't change the fact that she is not with us anymore. So how do we continue to have a path forward that celebrates the greatness and the doors that she just blew down for so many of us and continue to? And I mean, the fact is, she is always going to be one of the foremost important Black singers on the face of the planet.
And I want you to tell me in 60 seconds or less, Whitney is in your family, you're a church going family, everybody's looking at you like you're a church. What do you do? What do you not do? 30 seconds, less than 60 seconds, if you can tell me, how do you empower little Whitney in your home?
Don't project your own expectations or pressures onto them. Just start there and listen to them and ask them questions, but mostly listen to them.
Yeah, because I'm sure if it just meant Robin, Sissy would love, nothing better than to have her Whitney with her.
Yeah.
And it's kind of across the board, even as the family, that Robin helped stabilize her, someone she could talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what this work is, you've had me listening to Whitney. My favorite song is Didn't We Almost Have It All?
Like, oh my God, I love to hear that.
It really is. Yeah. So I thank you for this book. You've taken me, like I said to you when we first started talking, that, every book comes in your life for a reason. And this book came into my life exactly when I needed it. Right before we were talking, I think I put up, was listening to Waiting to Exhale. Yeah, I needed to exhale a bit. So I thank you for this work. And this is just amazing. I'm an ultimate Whitney fan, but this is, like you said, scholarly work. You've given me different perspective, her life on my life, how I view myself through her music and the time period. You've just done all of that, sir.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
I'm excited to see who you're going to do next, but I'm a fan. Where do we find you? How do we find you?
I am at Garrett Kennedy on Twitter and Instagram, and also garrettkennedy.net. You can keep up with my work and get in contact with me and all of the things.
We will follow whatever you put out. This is amazing work.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Okay.